The station master quickly took the ticket from him, but the young man did not move on or make way for the sub-inspector. Can you tell me, station master sahib, if there is a place I can stay in this village? The station master was irritated. The visitor's urban accent, his appearance, dress, and hold all had the station master holding back his temper. There is no hotels or inns in Mano Majra, he answered with polite sarcasm. There is only the Sikh temple. You will see the yellow flag mast in the center of the village. Thank you, sir. The police party and the station master scrutinized the youth with a little diffidence. Not many people said thank you in these parts. Most of the thank you crowd were often foreign educated. They had heard of several well to do young men educated in England donning peasant garb to do rural uplift work. Some were known to be communist agents, some were sons of millionaires, some sons of high government officials. All were looking for trouble and capable of making a lot of noise. One had to be careful. The young man went out of the station towards the village. He walked with a consciously erect gait, a few yards in front of the policeman. He was uneasily aware of their attention. The itch on the back of his neck told him that they were looking at him and talking about him. He did not scratch or look back. He just walked on like a soldier. He saw the flag master draped in the yellow cloth with a triangular flag above the conglomeration of mud huts. On the flag was Sikh symbol in black, a quoit with a dagger running through, and two swords crossed beneath. He went along the dusty path lined on either side by scraggy bushes of prickly pear which fenced it off from the field. The path wound its narrow way past the mud huts to the opening in the center where the moneylender's house, the mosque, and the temple faced each other. Underneath the peepal tree, half a dozen villagers were sitting on a low wooden platform talking to each other. They got up as soon as they saw the policeman and followed them into Ramlal's house. No one took any notice of the stranger. He stepped into the open door of the temple courtyard. At the end opposite the entrance was a large hall in which the scripture, the Granth, lay wrapped in gaudy silks under a velvet awning. On one side were two rooms. A brick stairway ran along the wall to the roof of the rooms. Across the courtyard was a well with a high parapet. Beside the well stood a 4-foot brick column supporting the long flag mast with a yellow color covering it like a stocking. The young man did not see anyone about. He could hear the sound of wet clothes being beaten on a slab of stone. He walked timidly to the other side of the well. An old Sikh got up with water dripping from his beard and white shorts. Sat Sri Akal, Sat Sri Akal. Can I stay for 2 or 3 days? This is Gurudwara, the Guru's house. Anyone may stay here, but you must have your head covered and you must not bring in any cigarettes or tobacco, nor smoke. I do not smoke, said the young man, putting the whole dal on the ground and spreading his handkerchief on his head. No, Babu Sahib, only when you go in the near the book, the Granth Sahib, you take your shoes off and cover your head. Put your luggage in that room and make yourself comfortable. Will you have something to eat? That is very kind of you, but I have brought my own food. The man showed the visitor to the spare room and then went back to the well. The young man went to the room. Its only furniture was a charpai lying in the middle. There was a large colored calendar on one wall. It had a picture of the Guru on horseback with a hawk on one hand. Alongside the calendar were nails to hang clothes. The visitor emptied his holdall. He took out his air mattress and below it up on the charpai. He laid out pajamas and a silk dressing gown on the mattress. He got out a tin of sardines, a tin of Australian butter, and a packet of dry biscuits. He shook his water bottle. It was empty. The old Sikh came to him, combing his long beard with his fingers. What is your name? He asked, sitting down on the threshold. Iqbal. What is yours? Iqbal Singh, queried the old man. Without waiting for an answer, he continued, I am the Bhai of the temple, Bhai Meet Singh. What is your business in Mano Majra, Iqbal Singh ji? The young man was relieved that the other had not gone on with his first question. He did not have to say what Iqbal he is. He could be a Muslim, Iqbal Muhammad. It could be a Hindu Iqbal Chand or a Sikh Iqbal Singh. It was one of the few names common to the three communities. In a Sikh village, an Iqbal Singh would no doubt get a better deal, even if his hair was shorn and his beard shaved, than an Iqbal Muhammad or an Iqbal Chand. He himself had few religious feelings. I am a social worker, Bhaiji. There is much to be done in our villages. Now with this partition there is so much bloodshed going on. Someone must do something to stop it. My party has sent me here. Since this place is a vital point for refugees movements, trouble here would be disastrous. The Bhai did not seem interested in Iqbal's occupation. Where are you from, Iqbal Singh ji? Iqbal knew that meant his ancestors and not himself. I belong to district Jhelum, now in Pakistan, but I have been in foreign countries a long time. It is after seeing the world that one feels how backward we are and one wants to do things about it. So I do social work. How much do they pay you? Iqbal had learned not to resent these questions. I don't get paid very much, just my expenses. Do they pay the expenses of your wife and children also? No, Bhaiji, I'm not married. I really. How old are you? 27. Tell me, do other social workers come to this village? Iqbal decided to ask questions to stop Meet Singh's interrogation. Sometimes the American paid padris come. Do you like their preaching Christianity in your village? Everyone is welcome to his religion. Here next door is a Muslim mosque. When I pray to my guru, uncle Imam Baksh calls to Allah. How many religions do they have in Europe? They are all Christians of one kind or other. They do not quarrel about their religions as we do here. We do not really bother very much about religion. So I have heard, said Meet Singh ponderously. That is why they have no morals. The sahibs and their wives go about with other sahibs and their wives. That is not good, is it? But they do not tell lies like we do, and they are not corrupt and dishonest as so many of us are, answered Iqbal. He got out his tin opener and opened the tin of sardines. He spread the fish on a biscuit and continued to talk while he ate. Morality, Meet Singh ji, is a matter of money. Poor people cannot afford to have morals, so they have religion. Our first problem is to get people more food, clothing, and comfort. That can only be done by stopping exploitation by the rich and abolishing landlords. That that can only be done by changing the government. Meet Singh was disgusted with disgusted fascination watched the young man eating fish complete with head, eye, and tail. He did not pay much attention to the lecture on rural indebtedness, the average national income, and the capitalist exploitation which the other poured forth with flakes of dry biscuits. When Iqbal had finished eating, Meet Singh got up and brought him a tumbler of water from his pitcher. Iqbal did not stop talking. He only raised his voice when the bhai went out. Iqbal produced a large little packet of cellophane paper from his pocket, took a white pill from it, and dropped it in the tumbler. He had seen Meet Singh's thumb with his black crescent of dirt under the nail dipping into the water. In any case, it was out of a well which could never have been chlorinated. Are you ill? Asked the old man, seeing the other wait for the pill to dissolve. No, it helps me to digest my food. We city dwellers need this sort of things after meal. Iqbal resumed his speech. To add it all, he continued, there is a police system which, instead of safeguarding the citizen, maltreats him and lives on corruption and bribery. You all know about that, I am sure. The old man nodded his head in agreement. Before he could comment, the young man spoke again. A party of policemen with the inspector came over on the same train with me. They will no doubt eat up all the chickens. The inspector will make a little money in bribes and they will move on to the next village. One would think they had nothing else to do but fleece people. A reference to the police awakened the old man from his absent-minded listening. So the police have come after all. I must go and see what they are doing. They must be at the moneylender's house. He was murdered last night, just across from the Gurudwara. The dacoits took a lot of cash and they saved over 5,000 rupees in silver and gold ornaments from his woman. Meet Singh realized the interest he had created slowly got up, repeating, I should be going. All the village will be there. They will be taking the corpus of medical examination. If a man is killed, he can not be cremated till the doctor certifies him dead. The old man gave a wry smile. A murder? Why? Why was he murdered? Stammered Iqbal, somewhat Bewildered, he was surprised that Meet Singh had not mentioned the murder of the next door neighbor all this time. Was it communal? Is it all right for me to be here? I do not suppose I can do much if the village is all excited about a murder. Why, Babu Sahib, you have come to stop killing and you are upset by one murder? Asked Meet Singh, smiling. I thought you had come to stop such things, Babu Sahib, but you are quite safe in Mano Majra, he added. Dacoits do not come to the same village for more than once a year. There will be another dacoity in another village in a few days, and people will forget about this one. We can have a meeting here one night after the evening prayer, and you can tell them all you want. You had better rest. I will come back and tell you what happens. The old man hobbled out of the courtyard. Iqbal collected the empty tin, his knife and fork and tin plate, and took them all to wash. In the afternoon, Iqbal stretched himself on a coarse string charpai and tried to get some sleep. He had spent the night sitting on his bedroll in the crowded third class compartment. Every time he had dozed off, the train had come to a halt at some wayside station, and the door was forced to open, and more peasants poured in with their wives' bedding and tin trunks. Some child sleeping in its mother's lap would start howling till its wail was smothered by a breast thrust into his mouth. The shouting and clamor would continue until long after the train had left the station. The same thing was repeated again and again till the compartment meant for 50 had almost 200 people in it, sitting on the floor, on seats, on luggage racks, on trunks, on bedrolls, and on each other, and all standing in the corners. There were dozens outside, parked precariously on footboards, holding on to the door handles. There were several people on the roof. The heat and smell were oppressive. Tempers were frayed, and every minute an argument would start because someone had spread himself out too much or had trod on another's foot on his way to the lavatory. The argument would be joined on either side by friends and relatives, and then by all the others trying to patch it up. Iqbal had tried to read in the dim light speckled with shadows of moths that fluttered around the globe. He had hardly read a paragraph before his neighborhood had observed, "You are reading?" "Yes, I am reading." "What are you reading?" "A book." It had not worked. The man had simply taken the book out of the Iqbal's hand and turned over its pages. "English, you must be educated." Iqbal did not comment. The book had gone round the compartment for scrutiny. They had all looked at him. He was educated, therefore belonged to a different class. He was a babu. "What honorable noun does he honor bear?" My name is Iqbal. May your Iqbal fame increase." The man had obviously taken him to be a Muslim. Just as well, all the passengers appear to be Muslims on their way to Pakistan. "Where does your wealth reside, Babu Sahib?" "My poor home is in Jhelum district," Iqbal had answered without irritation. The answer confirmed the likelihood of his being Muslim. Jhelum was in Pakistan. Thereafter, other passengers had joined in the cross-examination. Iqbal had to tell them what he did, what his source of money was, how much he was worth, where he had studied, and why he had not married, all the illnesses he had even suffered from. They had discussed their own domestic problems and diseases and sought his advice. Did Iqbal know of any secret prescriptions or herbs that the English used when they were run down? Iqbal had given up the attempts to sleep or read. They had kept up the conversation till the early hours of the morning. He would have described the journey as insufferable except that the limits to which the human endurance could be stretched in India made the word meaningless. He got off at Mano Majra with a sigh of relief. He could breathe the fresh air. He was looking forward to a long siesta. But sleep would not come to Iqbal. There was no ventilation in the room. It had a musty, earthy smell. A pile of clothes in the corner stank of stale clarified butter, and there was flies buzzing all around. Iqbal spread a handkerchief on his face. He could hardly breathe. With all that, just as he had managed to doze off, Meet Singh came in exclaiming philosophically, "Robbing a fellow villager is like stealing from one's mother." "Iqbal Singh ji, this is Kaliyug, the dark age. Have you ever heard of dacoits looting their neighbor's home? Not all morality has left the world." Iqbal removed the handkerchief from his face. "What has happened?" "What has happened?" repeated Meet Singh, feigning surprise. "Ask me what has not happened." "The police sent for Jagga. Jagga is a Badmash number 10 from the number of police register in which the name of bad characters are listed, but Jagga had run away, absconded. Also, some of the loot, a bag of bangles, was found in his courtyard, so we know who did it. This is not the first time he has committed, he has it in his blood. His father and grandfather were all dacoit and were hanged for murder, but they never robbed their own village folk. As a matter of fact, when they were at home, no dacoit dared come to Mano Majra. Jagat Singh had disgraced his family. Iqbal sat up rubbing his forehead. His countrymen's code of morals had always puzzled him with his anglicized way of looking at things. Punjabi's was even more baffling. For them, truth, honor, financial integrity were all right, but these were placed lower down the scale of values than being true to one's salt, to one's friend and fellow villagers. For friends, you could lie in court or cheat, and no one would blame you. On the contrary, you become a naradmi and a he-man who had defied authority, magistrates and police, and religion, oath on the scripture, but proved true to friendship. It was a projection of rural society where everyone in the village was a relation, and loyalty to the village was the supreme test. What bothered Meet Singh, a priest, was not that Jagga had committed murder, but that his hands were soiled with the blood of a fellow villager. If Jagga had done the same thing in the neighboring village, Meet Singh would gladly have appeared in his defense and sworn on the holy Granth that Jagga had been praying in the Gurudwara at the time of the murder. The Iqbal had wearied of the talking to people like Meet Singh. He did not understand. He had come to the conclusion that he did not belong. Meet Singh was disappointed that he had failed to arouse Iqbal's interest. You have seen the world and read many books, but take it from me that a snake can cast its slow but not its poison. This saying is worth 100,000 rupees. Iqbal did not register appreciation of the value saying. Meet Singh explained Jagga had been going straight for some time. He plugged his land and looked after his cattle. He never left the village and reported himself to be Lambardar every day. But how long can a snake keep straight? There is a crime in his blood. There is no crime in anyone's blood any more than there is a goodness in the bloods of others, answered Iqbal Singh, waking up. There was one of his pet theories. Does anyone ever bother to find out why people steal and rob and kill? No. They put them in village and hang them. It is easier. If the fear of the gallows or the cell had stopped people from killing or stealing, there would be no murdering or stealing. It does not. They hang a man every day in this province, yet 10 get murdered every 24 hours. But no bhaiji, criminals are not born, they are made by hunger, want and injustice. Iqbal felt a little silly for coming out with these platitudes. He must check his habits of turning a conversation into a sermon. He returned to the subject. I suppose they will get Jagga easily if he is such a well known character. Jagga cannot go very far. He can be recognized from a cause. He is an he is an arm length taller than anyone else. The Deputy Sahib has already sent orders to all police stations to keep a lookout for Jagga. Who is Deputy Sahib? Asked Iqbal. You do not know the Deputy, Meet Singh surprised. It's Hukum Chand. He is staying at the Dak Bangla north of the bridge. Now Hukum Chand is a Nar Admi. He started as a food constable see where he is now. He always kept the Sahibs pleased and they gave him one promotion after another. The last one gave him his own place and made him deputy. Yes, Iqbal Singh ji, Hukum Chand is a Nar Admi and clever. He is true to his friends and always gets things done for them. He has had dozens of relatives given good jobs. He is one of the 100. Nothing counterfeit about Hukum Chand. Is he friends of yours? Friends? No, no, protested him, Meet Singh. I am a humble bhai of the Gurudwara and he is the emperor. He is the government and we are his subjects. If he comes to Mano Majra, you will see him. There was a pause in the conversation. Iqbal slipped his feet into the sandals and stood up. I must take a walk. Which way do you suggest I should go? Go in any direction you like. It is all the same open country. Go to the river, you will see the trains coming and going. If you cross the railroad track, you will see the Dak Bungalow. Don't be late. There are bad times and it is best to be indoors before dark. Besides, I have told the Lambardar and the uncle Imam Baksh, he is a mullah of the mosque, that you are here. They may be coming in to talk to you. No, I won't be late. Iqbal stepped out of the Gurudwara. There was no sign of activity now. The police had apparently finished investigating. Half a dozen constables lay sprawled on charpais under the peepal tree. The door of Ramlal's house was open, and some villagers sat on the floor in the courtyard. A woman wailed in a sing song which ended up in the convulsions of crying in which the other woman joined. It was hot and still. The sun blazed on the mud walls. Iqbal walked in the shade of the wall of the Gurudwara. Children had relieved themselves all along it. Men had used it as a urinal. A mangy bitch lay on her side with a litter of 8 skinny pups yapping and tugging at her sagging udders. The lane ended abruptly at the village pond, a small patch of muddy water full of buffaloes with their heads sticking out. A footpath skirted the pond, skirted the pond and went along a dry watercourse through the wheat fields towards the river. Iqbal went along the watercourse, watching his steps carefully. He reached the riverside just as the express from Lahore came up on the bridge. He watched its progress through the crisscross of steel. Like all the trains, it was full. From the roof, legs dangled down the sides onto the doors and windows. The doors and windows were jammed with heads and arms. There were people on buffers between the bogies. The two on the buffers on the tail end of the train were merrily kicking their legs and gesticulating. The train picked up speed after crossing the bridge. The engine driver started blowing the whistle and continued blowing it till he had passed Mano Majra station. It was an expression of relief that they were out of Pakistan and into India. Iqbal went up to the river bank towards the bridge. He was planning to go under it towards the dark bungalow, where he noticed a Sikh soldier watching him from a sentry box at the end of the bridge. Iqbal changed his mind and walked boldly up to the rail embankment and turned towards Mano Majra station. The maneuver allayed the sentry's suspicion. Iqbal went 100 yards up and then casually sat on the railway line. The passing express had woken Mano Majra from its late siesta. Boys threw stones at the buffaloes in the pond and drove them home. The groups of women went out in the fields and scattered themselves behind the bushes. A bullock cart carrying Ramral's corpse left the village and went towards the station. It was guarded by policemen. Several villagers went a little distance with it and returned along with their relatives. Iqbal stood up and looked all around, from the railway station to the roof of the rest house, showing above the plumps of the pampas, from the bridge to the village to the back to the railway station. The whole place was littered with men, women, children, cattle, and dogs. There were kites wheeling up high up in the sky. Long lines of crows were flying from somewhere to somewhere, and millions of sparrows twittered about the trees. Where in India could one find a place which did not teem with life? Iqbal thought of his first reaction on reaching Bombay. Milling crowds, millions of them, on the quayside, in the streets, on railway platforms. Even at night, the pavements were full of people. The whole country was like an overcrowded room. What could you expect when the population went up by every minute? 5 million every year. It made all planning in industry and agriculture mockery. Why not spend the same amount of effort in checking the increase in population? But how could you, in the land of the Kama Sutra, the home of phallic worship and the sun cult? The Iqbal was woken from his angry daydreaming by a shimmering sound along the steel wires which run parallel to the railway lines. The signal above the sentry box near the bridge came down. Iqbal stood up and brushed his clothes. The sun had gone down beyond the river. The russet sky turned grey as shades of twilight spread across the plain. A new moon, looking like a finely pared fingernail, appeared beside the evening star. The muezzin call to prayer rose above the rumble of the approaching train. Iqbal found his way back easily. All lanes met in the temple, mosque, the moneylender's house, strangled with a peepal tree in the center. Sound of the wailing still came from the Ramlal's house. In the mosque, a dozen men stood in 2 rows, silently going through their genuflections. In the Gurudwara, Meet Singh, sitting beside the book which was folded up in muslin on a cot, was reciting the evening prayer. 5 or 6 men and women sat in a semicircle around a hurricane lantern and listened to him. Iqbal went straight to his room and lay down on his charpai in the dark. He had barely shut his eyes when the worshippers began to chant. The chanting stopped for a couple of minutes only to start again. The ceremony ended with shouts of Sat Sri Akal and the beating of a drum. The men and women came out. Meet Singh held the lantern and helped them find their shoes. They started talking loudly, in a babble. The only word Iqbal could make out was Babu. Somebody who had noticed Iqbal come in had told the others. There was some whispering and shuffling of feet and then silence. Iqbal shut his eyes once more. A minute later, Meet Singh stood on the threshold holding the lantern. Iqbal Singh ji, have you gone to bed without food? Would you like some spinach? I have also curd and buttermilk. No, thank you, Bhaiji. I have the food I want. Our poor food, started Meet Singh. No, no, it is not that, interrupted Iqbal, sitting up. It is just that I have it and it may be wasted if I don't eat it. I am a little tired and would like to sleep. Then you must have some milk, Banta Singh. The Lambardar is bringing you some. I will tell him to hurry up if you want to sleep early. I have another chapai for you on the roof. It is too hot to sleep in here. Meet Singh left the hurricane lantern in the room and disappeared in the dark. The prospect of having to talk to the Lambardar was not very exciting. Iqbal fished out his silver hip flask from underneath the pillow and took a long swig of whiskey. He ate a few dry biscuits that were in the paper packet. He took his mattress and pillow to the roof where the charpai had been laid for him. Meet Singh apparently slept in the courtyard to guard the Gurudwara. Iqbal lay on the charpai and watched the stars in the teeming sky until he heard several voices entering the Gurudwara and coming up the stairs. Then he got up to greet the visitors. Sat Sri Akal, Babu Sahib. Salam to you, Babu Sahib. They shook hands. Meet Singh did not bother to introduce them. Iqbal pushed the air mattress aside to make room on the charpai for the visitors. He sat down on the floor himself. I am ashamed for not having presented myself earlier, said the Sikh. Please forgive me. I have brought some milk for you. Yes, Sahib, we are ashamed of ourselves. You are our guest and we have not rendered you any service. Drink the milk before it gets cold, added the other visitor. He was a tall, lean man with a clipped beard. It was a very kind of you. I know you have been busy with the police. I don't drink milk, really I don't. We city dwellers. The Lambardar ignored Iqbal's well-mannered protests. He removed his dirty handkerchief from a large brass tumbler and began to stir the milk with his forefinger. It is fresh. I milked the buffalo only an hour back and got the wife to boil it. I know you educated people only drink boiled milk. There is quite a lot of sugar in it. It has settled at the bottom. He had it with a final stir. To emphasize the quality of milk, he picked up a slab of cotton cream on his forefinger and slapped it back in the milk. Here, Babuji, drink it before it gets cold. No, no, thank you. No, 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 thank you, no, protested Iqbal. He did not know how to get out of his predicament without offending the visitors. I don't ever drink milk, but if you insist, I will drink it later. I like it cold. Yes, you drink it as you like, Babuji, said the Muslim, coming to his rescue. Banta Singh, leave the tumbler here. Bhai will bring it back in the morning. The Lambardar covered the tumbler with his handkerchief and put it under the Iqbal's charpai. There was a long pause. Iqbal had pleasant visions of pouring the milk with all its clotted milk down the drain. Well, Babuji, began the Muslim, tell us something. What is happening in the world? What is all about Pakistan and Hindustan? We live in this little village and know nothing, the Lambardar put in. Babuji, tell us, why did the English leave? Iqbal did not know how to answer simple questions like this. Independence meant little or nothing to those people. They did not even realize that it was a step forward and that all they needed to do was to take the next step and turn the make believe political freedom into a real economic one. They left because they had to. They had hundreds of thousands of young men trained to fight in the war. This time they had arms too. Haven't you heard of the mutiny of the Indian sailors? The soldiers would have done the same thing. The English were frightened. They did not shoot any of the Indians who joined the Indian National Army set up by the Japanese because they thought the whole country would turn against them. Iqbal's thesis did not cut much ice. Babuji, what you say may be right, said the Lambardar hesitantly, but I was in the last war and fought in Mesopotamia and Gallipoli. We liked English officers. They were better than the Indian. Yes, added Meet Singh. My brother, who is a Havaldar, said all sepoys are happier with the English officers than with Indian. My brother's colonels, Mem Sahib, still send my niece things from London. You know Lambada Sahib, she even sent money at her wedding. Why Indian officer's wife will do that? Iqbal tried to take offensive. Why don't you people want to be free? Why don't you remain slaves of all your lives? After a long silence, the Lambadar answered, freedom must be a good thing, but what will we get out of it? Educated people like you, Babu Sahib, will get the jobs the English had. Will we get more lands or more buffaloes? No, the Muslim said. Freedom is for the educated people who fought for it. We were slaves of the English, now we will be the slaves of the educated Indians or the Pakistanis. Iqbal was startled at the analysis. What you say is absolutely right, he agreed warmly. If you want freedom to mean something for you, the peasants and workers, you have to get together and fight. Get the Bania Congress government out. Get rid of the princes and the landlords, and freedoms will mean you just what you think it should. More land, more buffaloes, no debts. This is what the fellow told us, interrupted Meet Singh. That fellow Lambardar was his name. Comrade something or other. Are you a comrade, Babu Sahib?